And a salute to the flag, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
School committee members and student reports, school committee chair report, I have none. Resource committee?
Resource Committee, we met on January 11th, along with the Facilities Committee, and we had discussed, we approved our minutes from our December 1st meeting. We got an update on the solar at Rheingold and Memorial. We talked about the grants we submitted to MSBA, which will probably be on tonight. We discussed the Lonjo roof, Goodrich roof, South Street boilers, South Street West roof, and other MSBA updates. We talked about the Memorial Auditorium seating and Phase 4 Crocker Field grandstands. And we discussed custodial coverage in the schools. That's kind of what we talked about.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. You covered two categories, school building needs as
Right.
well. Any comments from the committee? Seeing none. Policy Committee,
We are meeting on...
Reagan.
Thank you. We will be meeting on the 31st at 4 o'clock at third floor central office. The Assistant Superintendent Giaquinto and I met last week. We are reviewing several policies, and we are also catching up with the policies we didn't get to because of the great work of WANA last December. So you'll hear from us at our next meeting.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Seeing none, moving on to Student Support Committee, Ms. LaBelle Pierce.
We will meet on February 6th, and one item on the agenda is we had to put it off a couple of times, but just kind of strategic planning for the music department, and how to encourage even more participation in that really great program. And then we'll be looking at some follow-up information. We do have some of the first gala grant money that's being assigned, and some of the first after-school programs that are relating to that. So we'll get a report on that, and an agenda will be published hopefully by the end of this week. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. LaBelle Pierce. Any comments from the committee?
Thank you.
Thank you. School Personnel Committee and Executive, I'll combine those. We're still working with the nutritional services folks and trying to hammer out a contract agreement. Student report.
So 36 new members were inducted to the Fitchburg High School chapter of the National Honor Society on January 12th.
We finished our midterms last Friday because we had a snow day last Wednesday, so they were pushed back a day. And today we started semester 2.
This past Saturday, FHS hosted the SATs, and it was a really good turnout.
This Friday, January 27th, there's going to be a blood drive at Fitchburg High School. So at lunches, there's opportunities for students to sign up.
There's a can drive in honor of the Super Bowl, which begins on Wednesday, and the class of 2018 is accepting cans and money until February 1st.
This Saturday, we have our winter dance, which starts at 7 p.m. So tickets are on sale for students at lunch, and they're $10. And there's also a raffle for a prom ticket if you get a ticket to the winter ball.
And also this Saturday, the AP English mock exam will be held at FHS at 8:30.
We didn't get your name.
Oh, I'm Hannah.
Hannah
Wilder.
Wilder. Okay, welcome.
Thanks.
Any questions from the committee?
The can drive?
Mm-hmm.
When is that? And
It's
what's
gonna
it
be
for?
starting this Wednesday. It's just in honor of the Super Bowl, like soup. And it'll just be collecting cans for the food pantry.
Okay.
Thank you.
And just for the record, for everybody at home, because Hannah, we got your name, if you could just tell, because people are actually, I think people are watching.
Yeah.
So if they are, just tell them who you are.
Brianna Herndon.
Okay. And the other two young ladies, Yasina Mary and Nezani, will be here at the next meeting because we have something for them to recognize their their efforts in working with us. So they were not able to come tonight, so we'll just put them off to the next night.
Questions, comments? No? Thank you, folks. Approval of the minutes from the previous school committee, approval of the minutes of regular school committee meeting January 9th, 2017. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion?
Motion made. Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? It is unanimous. I don't believe there's a need for executive session, correct? Communications? Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. A few things. I brought you all a flyer for the Women's Interfaith Luncheon, Peace, Justice, and Community that will be held this coming Saturday, January 28th. This is an event that is being organized by the Laina Imala, which is the women's auxiliary of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, and we have a number of the children who attend the mosque in our schools. So this is a really wonderful way, I think, to connect people of both the faith community and the community in general, just for people to meet one another, find out what we're doing, and kind of share resources. That's one item. The other item is we're coming up on the first Saturday of the month. You can read with Therapause Therapy Pets at the Fitchburg Library, and that is going to be on Saturday, February 4th from 10:30 to noon. The final piece is just to give you a report back on the WCV Radio for Your Eyes at Slattery's. It did really well. We all want to do it again to benefit the 8th grade again. So we made about $450 that will be donated to Longjo. And I think that's, it's not quite one child's full ticket, but it'll certainly help. And I'll keep you guys in the loop when we do a reprise. I think that's it for me.
Thank you. And allow me to thank committee person Cragen for your efforts in the play and raising the money for the kids. We appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
It is my pleasure, and we're total hams, so we'll do it again.
Good. Public comment. Is there anyone here wishing to speak? Seeing none, moving on. Superintendent's report.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. As you know, there was an article, now it seems like a long, long time ago, about this book, about Ron Bouchard, and I thought the connection to our own teachers and our own students was something that really should be featured and let the community know. So I asked Sarah DiPolito Elamy to come here, and I think you have at least Logan, and I don't know if there's another student here, but to come and talk about this great collaboration, with one of our local businesses. So, Sarah, come on up to the front. And I think you've seen Logan here a few other times usually before musical to sing. Yeah. Yeah, this is like third or fourth, I think. So.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So, do you wanna?
So I don't know really where to begin, but yeah, we did with Miss Lamy's help, we were able to kind of work on the art project collaboration thing with, I can't remember how to say his last name, DeRozier. Sorry, there's just so many unique last names here. So we were able to work on this project with him as it was his own way of kind of reaching out to the children in Fitchburg and Leominster, because the book revolves around this town called From Impossible, which is his version of Fitchburg and Leominster, where he grew up. And he kind of wanted to get the message across that, wherever you grow up, it doesn't really matter where you come from. You can do great things. And he used his own childhood hero, Ron Bouchard, as a perfect example of that. And himself as a child for it in the book. So kind of the idea when it came to getting students involved was doing end-page artwork pieces to kind of affirm the fact that, see, look at these students. They have published art in a book. They are able to do things that are great that they love. So that's kind of what his book is all about. You can do what you love no matter where you come from. And he used students, me, Greta Jarvie, and Katrina French. I don't know why they're where they are. So it's kind of like I'll speak out for them as well because they are also members of the project. But yeah, that's kind of like the gist of it.
How did the connection come about, Sarah, that, here's this thing happening outside of school, and then all of a sudden it's connected, and I know your art class worked on it, and...
Yep. So Tom DiGeronimo is a big piece who's missing from the puzzle. I was contacted maybe last February or last March from Tom about opportunity for our students to be a part of this project. And so Tom arranged for me to meet Jim, and we sat down, Tom, Jim, and I, to hear the gist of what Jim was looking for from our students and our involvement, just to see if it was going to be a fit for our school and how it would fit. And so Tom was involved from the very beginning, and then when the art piece evolved more, it was the students and myself as the bridge between Jim and them that really started to put the pieces together. And it was just a really neat experience for the students. I mean, they got to see the project from the beginning as like a storyboard without illustrations. They got to meet the illustrator Amanda Erb and see her preliminary sketches through to the building of the book itself. So they really got to see all of the pieces that go into from an idea to the making of it and then the final product, where the students were invited to the book signing at the Ron Bouchard Museum down on 2A. And so that was even a neat experience because we got to see race cars and meet the family. And so it was rewarding in many ways for the students.
It was. It was an interesting museum, too.
Nice.
Any questions from anyone on that?
Yes.
So I'm trying to remember the news article, but Logan, did you draw some of the race cars, or?
I did draw some of the race cars, yes. I did 3 of the drawings. It was, I want to say it was like a Pinto 47. It was a purple car, a yellow car.
There you go.
I am not good with
There
car
are
names.
people here who know what a Pinto is.
I remember.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, and so did you have to do research on what those look like, or did you just kind of imagine it on your own, or?
I mean, when it comes to doing art like this and it's based off of somebody's life, you kind of have to do a little bit of research, and I'm not like an expert on cars, but I did have a feeling of like how their design would most likely be done because I have seen race cars before. So I did do a little bit of research to make sure that they were as accurate as I possibly could make them. So yes, there was some research that went into it.
Could I ask a follow-up?
Sure.
How did it work in terms of like choosing selections for what would be included? Like, were you all consulted? Did you have any role?
So when it came to trying to figure out like what we were going to draw, he, the author of the book, gave us like these options of what we could draw. So like either very popular sceneries or hangouts in Fitchburg and Leominster, portraits of him or like him and his wife together, or like things from his career, like the cars and whatnot. So I was kind of like, I'll draw really anything. Just tell me what you want for it. So I ended up, after some consulting and a few emails, I kind of figured out, okay, so he wants me to draw these cars, and he sent me images of the cars, and I looked up other images of them as well, so I could kind of like get an the gist of how like drawing it at certain angles and like how to keep it going and consistency.
Okay, cool.
Cool.
Great. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And, anytime any of our students gets involved in a community project, it's good for all of us. So we want to thank you for that, and Sarah for taking the lead at the school. So thanks a lot. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, school calendar. You have a school calendar in front of you that is coming forth for the first reading. Yep, it's coming for the first reading. Very few changes, really. I think there were only 1 or 2 dates that changed. This is one of those calendars where it's not requiring a big change of school vacation or anything. As is the practice, we also sent the school calendar for review to the MTA, to the FEA, and they came back with really no feedback other than yep, looks okay. So we would be moving this to a second reading, and then eventually.
It's just a final. It's just
Oh, it is the final. Okay, I wasn't sure. So that this would be the final reading, and then we'd be able to publish it. Because believe it or not, we're already getting a lot of phone calls from people. What's the school calendar? I'm making plans, and I'm trying to set things in stone. So, so that's what you have there. Then, school presentations. Any questions on the school calendar?
We'll be taking that up for a vote,
Oh,
correct?
yeah.
I believe?
Yes.
Yeah.
So this has been sent out to,
It's been sent out to the Teachers Association.
okay,
It has not been sent out yet or published till it's finalized here.
yeah, okay, but it's had a chance for commentary. yeah.
Yep. Okay. So, as you know, we're starting a kind of a new approach to our school presentations. We're halfway through the year. And this year I asked the principals to kind of put together a one-page summary of, what are the main things that they've been working on, talk a little bit about that, but really to put the presentation on the short end of this work and really have the dialogue between the school committee members and the principal be the more extensive part, because I find that seems to be where the richness is and where people at home actually hear a lot about what's going on in the schools. So with that, I'll also say Adam is coming up today. I've been going around to the schools, spending a couple of hours in each school, meeting with the principal, getting in and out of classrooms. I spent 2 hours, I guess, today at Crocker. What a great experience. Just the school in general, what I saw going on in the classrooms. The first classroom we walked into was a kindergarten, full, 6 different tables with 5 or 6 children at every table. I think all but 1 or 2 of the tables working independently. There was a teacher and a para at 2 of the tables, and the other 4 tables were totally immersed in what the kindergarten. It was really good. So I think that what I saw today in a lot of the classrooms and what I heard is going to be reflected on what Adam is going to present tonight. So, Adam, welcome.
I hope so. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Evening.
I'm happy to be here to present our update. Like Andre said, he asked us to come up what our focus was, and one focus, trying to narrow it down to one focus is rather difficult. So what I want to share with you is a couple of focuses, and I know you all have the one-page handout, but we're really looking this year on how to strengthen our co-teaching model and refine our work on social-emotional needs of our students. So with the co-teaching, we are lucky enough to partner with Boston College and the Lynch School of Education and have a coach consultant come in and look at what we're doing with co-teaching and work with us to really strengthen it. So it's interesting because where we started with this isn't where we are now. So we thought we needed lots of PD on different types of co-teaching and instruction for our teachers, but from working with this consultant who I've worked with in the past through the fellowship that I was involved in a couple years ago, really we came to the decision that the co-teaching is going rather well, but it's too teacher dependent. And what we mean by that is if we lost one of our teachers to retirement, which is going to happen to maybe 3 of our staff members within 3 to 8 years, it would be really difficult to start from scratch. And this is both the SPED teacher and the regular ed teacher. So we have systems in place for classroom teachers who teach reading, writing, and math, having literacy coaches. We can really get new teachers up to speed rather quickly. But with something like co-teaching and that relationship between the co-teachers, the co-teachers, the SPED teacher, and the regular ed teacher, losing one of those staff members would be devastating. We've been lucky enough so far that hasn't happened. So we're looking to put in routines, procedures, and almost a template so that we can kind of catch someone up to speed and just have it commonized throughout the building, because right now It's going well, but it's going well with a lot of different relationships. So we're looking at doing things like commonizing how we plan for co-teaching, which we kind of had, but I guess we're going away from this, what standard you're covering, what the procedure is going to be, and we're going to look more at students and grouping. One of the reasons that we like co-teaching so much is that when you walk into a room, you can't necessarily tell who's on an IEP and who's not. The other thing that I think is a benefit is we probably keep some kids off of IEPs because of the on-the-spot and specialized instruction that a regular ed student can get from a special ed teacher, just because they can notice something that maybe wouldn't be picked up by a regular ed teacher. So we really want teachers of co-teaching classrooms, when they're planning, to plan their groupings according to the need of the child and not just the IEP. So we don't want pull-out in the classroom. We want, when appropriate, our groups to be mixed by whatever the need is by the student. And that sounds rather simple, but it's a rather complex way to plan, and it's a complete mindset shift. So that's where we are with the co-teaching, and so far it's going fairly well. We notice that the teachers are already using the new planning model, and it's through probably 5 or 6 revisions already. What it has brought us to is a document of guiding questions that we're going to use with the co-teachers to basically plan this together. And some of that work will actually start in focus groups this Thursday, where we're going to have a review of different types of co-teaching.
May I ask?
Yes.
Could you just explain to me what you mean for planning grouping? So is it that, and I'm always intrigued by this because for my work, I'm not able to come in and see what you guys do, but so every classroom is paired with a special education teacher?
No, we have typically 2 co-teaching teachers on each grade level. So there'll be 2 classroom teachers,
Yep.
And either 1 or 2 special ed teachers will team with the teacher to be a co-teaching classroom.
And they could alternate where they go? Is that?
They could. It's probably better not to do that because it does take relationship building to have this be effective.
So
Teachers have to know each other really well.
How do you make that decision as to who's going to get the co-teaching model and who isn't going
Well,
to?
which teachers or students?
I guess both.
Well, with students, basically special education students are placed first,
Yep.
and then we look to have classes kind of equally weighted as far as children in need. Now, we are looking to do this also. So the one half of the classes are co-teaching with special education. The other half get the majority of our ELL students, and we are looking to use this model when we can with ELL teachers also.
So are the groupings of, and forgive me if I'm just kind of not in the right ballpark here, but are the groupings of like-minded or similar disabilities or similar issues?
We try to as far as placing students on IEPs, we try to do that because it will make it easier as far as meeting their needs.
Okay. All right, I'll stop for a minute and let you keep going. I was just
Okay.
trying to make some sense.
That was actually, if you have more questions on co-teaching, it would be a great time because I was going to move on to social emotional
I
learning.
think my question is more about what exposure, because I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense, right? Where you can specialize, you can help people who need particular help. But how does that work with really kind of creating as least restrictive environment as possible for kids?
Well, they're in a regular ed setting, so they're in a classroom. They're not being pulled out. And the way that the lessons are designed, you wouldn't necessarily know that someone is in special needs. So the activity is going to be changed based on the need of the student. So it's grade level curriculum. It's just delivered in a different way. So they're doing a lot of the same type of work, but in a different way, so it's not necessarily noticed. Now with pullout, and there is still some pullout happening at Crocker because some kids need that. The difference is the kids at a certain time get up, walk out of the room, go to a different classroom, and that's noticed much more than just a change in that activity to meet a need.
And the special education teacher is in there as the co-teacher, but they're really to support the students who have IEPs.
No, they're there to support everybody in the classroom.
Okay.
And the regular ed teacher will work with the special ed students. That's the benefit. So, students are being exposed to grade level peers, positive role models. I like to say positive peer pressure, right? So they see their friend who they're playing with on the playground doing this type of work. They're much more willing to give it a shot. And we notice that since we've been doing this, the expectations, both teachers and students on themselves, have gone way up. Just because there's a special need in an IEP doesn't mean that the end product of something can't be as high quality. It's just different. And that's what we're trying to accomplish. And it's really, it's very challenging.
Yep. I think, Adam, what I used to call incidental inclusion, you get kids who don't have an IEP, but they've lacked a skill, and they can be pulled right in and be taught that skill with a student who does have an IEP, which they're teaching. So I think I've always been supportive of the incidental inclusion in the classroom. So I think that's excellent.
Yeah, I think it's a way to keep students out of special education. Of course, it's always going to be a need. We've had very positive results since we switched to that. The students like it more. Like I said, expectations, if you talk to classroom teachers and special education teachers, it just skyrockets. If you're constantly pulling out and you're not seeing what the grade level peers are doing, you can really be skewed after doing that for 15, 20 years of what an expectation should be for a student in any grade. We find that students are willing to work much harder and have that, I know I'm always harping on growth mindset, but it's a lot easier to have a growth mindset if you're not leaving that room and doing the same type of things your peers are, rather than if you're being pulled out and, having something substantially different and at times, hopefully not a curriculum that isn't on grade level. Not to say that pull-out isn't needed. It is absolutely, in certain cases, needed and the best thing to do. But we find if we can have the majority of our students in co-teaching classrooms, then it's beneficial to the school and to them.
Thanks.
So the other main focus, and this has been a focus of ours for a while, is meeting the social emotional needs of our students. So we have a model of crisis intervention or prevention that addresses the needs of the students. And in fact, we are lucky enough to present at the Mass Association of School Superintendents and Teacher 21 conference a month ago.
Early December.
And it was exciting to hear what other schools are doing, and we stole some ideas that we want to try to put into effect. But we have a tiered approach, so we were really forced when we gave this presentation to kind of write down what it is that we do. And it really is like a three-tier approach. And the tier one kind of accounts for 80% of our students. And it's simple things, and you've heard me say some of these before, I'm sure. Putting structure into all unstructured times, arrival, dismissal, recess, lunch. We try to stay away from all the kids in the cafeteria in the morning, and it's hectic and loud and crazy. We bring them in. They eat, we separate, they're on computers, they're doing interventions, they might be doing a book club with the teacher, they might go into a classroom and get some homework help or whatever it is. Some teachers take advantage of this when they have duty and they pull a classroom full of kids and get some things done that they needed extra time for. We do have a tiered approach of discipline. That's a matrix that teachers created with me during our culture and climate committee, so it really lays out what to do if any type of discipline happens. It's very structured. So the teachers know and the students know. We try to keep students in class as much as possible. I mean, we even try to, our nurse takes data on the length of nurse visits, and we work on trying to keep those down. We have a character trait program. And we teach the characters that we think are important to be successful in school and at life. We call parents all day every day, nonstop. It's probably the single most important thing that you can do to really curb behaviors that we don't want to see in school. We utilize some existing opportunities in more effective ways. Coaching will be academic coaching, but if it's a new teacher that needs management, our coaches are experts with classroom management, and they will work with the teacher on that at the same time. The way we use data in ways to improve social emotional, I'll get into that in just a minute. Our after-school programming and tutoring, we try to be very strategic about who gets into some of those things. It's a little bit more difficult with the after-school program now, but tutoring, that definitely still happens. There's explicit teaching about neuroplasticity and growth mindset, guidance-led morning meetings where they teach these character traits and some of the growth mindset stuff. There's a school-wide social, emotional, professional development. South Bay is a agency located in Fitchburg now, but I think they started out in Worcester. They've been good enough to come in and give the teachers some professional development on trauma and things that you can do to work with students who have faced traumatic experiences. Co-teaching helps with that also. And basically what we try to do is just meet the needs of our families. So we will give rides to meetings. We've given rides to doctor's appointments for kids or on other appointments. We give them food, clothing, help them navigate Mass Health, help them get set up at the Career Opportunity Center. I believe that's at Mock. Anything that they need. We have a wonderful home liaison, Patty Durkee, who goes above and beyond every day in her job. We want to be a community resource to our families. If the family's in crisis, the kid's in crisis. So whatever we can do to help with the families, we try to do. So our tiers 2 and 3 interventions for social emotional, these are assigned through data meetings, student concern meetings, and through child study. So these are lunch bunch groups, mentoring program we had last year with the high school. We're trying to get that going again this year with high school seniors. We have student behavior action plans. We collaborate with collateral agencies. There's lots of students who receive therapy during the school day, mentors through South Bay and Luck, DCF, doctors, you name it. If it's going to help the student, we will work with them. And of course, there's always special education evaluation. One thing I wanted to get more into is student concern meetings. So that's the meeting. I'm sure you've all probably aware of this, but administration and guidance will meet every Monday, and we'll go through a list of kids who may be in crisis. We'll talk about individual students by grade level. We'll talk about what's going on with them social, emotionally, academically. We know that any type of behavior, acting out behavior, means there's a need that's being unmet. We try to figure out what that need is, and we create a plan to try to fulfill that need. Parents can be involved in these at times, but this is really what helps keep everything calm, is going through this list weekly, sometimes more than weekly. These meetings happen informally every day. There's also child study, which is a similar format, but a teacher can call that meeting. So if there's a kid who isn't coming up on our list and a teacher has a concern about, they can ask to have a child study team meeting. They come to the meeting with all the academic data and then their other concerns. We will try to find out if there's any type of other issues going on in their life, and again, create an action plan to try to help them meet their needs. And then the last part is a data meeting. Crocker's been using data for a long time, and I think we've been using it rather successfully, but every now and then there'll be kids who will come up, and they'll come up in kindergarten at a data meeting, and they'll come up in first grade in a data meeting, and they'll come up in second grade in a data meeting. And we tried all of these academic interventions, and they're not working. And we had figured out finally what's happening is we're trying to solve social-emotional need with an academic intervention. It's not going to work. So we kind of pumped the brakes. We started to include guidance into our academic data meetings. And now when that comes up and there's a student who our academic intervention's not working for, we'll figure out what's going on. Is this a social-emotional need that's blocking the student from growing academically? Our guidance counselors and our school liaison really have a pulse on most of the families in the school. We talk about, is there DCF involvement? What are the family dynamics? Are they in counseling? What's the living, any information that we can get, and we try to figure out if it's an academic or social emotional and create a plan accordingly. We usually give either one of those plans about 6 weeks. We check to see on the progress. If it's not working, we change it.
Adam, I have a question.
Sure.
If I were to ask the classroom teacher how disruptive their day is because of some behavior issues, and that seems to be more and more prevalent every day, social, emotional needs of students. What about the other 2/3 of the class and whether or not they're being able to learn?
Yeah.
With the disruptions that go on during the day, I hear anecdotal stories. Send to the office, and 15 minutes later, the kid's back in the classroom. Now, I know there's restrictions. We have to behave in a certain way, but that's becoming a real concern.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would hope if someone's back in 15 minutes, it's because the problem's solved and they're ready to learn.
Okay.
A lot of the time, we won't pull out, we'll push in. If someone wants out of a room, the last thing that you should give them is the out, right? So if it's someone who's consistently trying to get out, there's a whole slew of things that we would do before just pulling them out, talk to them for 15 minutes, and send them back. But if that's it, Mr. Bolak might go up, and instead of pulling the kid out, pull up a chair, sit down right next to them, and sit it out with them. And you do that enough times, they kind of get sick of it. Now, if you're asking, are there behaviors happening at Crocker that are interfering with other students' learning? There's absolutely behaviors that at times will interfere. Is it interfering to the point where it's disrupted to their education? I would say absolutely not. When it gets to that point, the child is removed from the room until they are ready to go back. Usually, we've been working with Corey, the new BCBA, Corey. He's great. Sorry, Corey, I don't remember your last name, but he's been fantastic. To come up with for those students to come up with behavior plans to extinguish the behaviors. They've been working great. He's great to work with. But no, I would say there are definitely severe behaviors, but not at the point where I feel that it's disrupting a educational process.
When I visited the school today, I brought up this exact topic, and one of the things that Adam said was sometimes a student is misbehaving because they want to act out in front of their peers, and sometimes the right thing to do is to either remove the peers for a short period of time. And he gave me examples where one time on a number of students the peers were removed, the thing was settled, and the student realized this isn't going to work, and it changed the behavior immediately. So I think the point is each person, each situation is totally different, and what works for one student might not work for another student.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons, one of the things is I'm going into the schools and spending a couple of hours is having this conversation. And I have to tell you, I was at Crocker for 2 hours today, walked the hallways, went into 5 classrooms from kindergarten to 4th grade. It was just very regular, ordinary school. Every classroom I walked by or went into, everyone was on task. Everything, learning was going on.
Yeah.
So I think that, as you hear from Adam, there are a lot of things in place. It's not about what you do when the student acts out and, they need to be removed. It's all the stuff that was just talked about here. It's structure, it's schedule, it's all the kinds of things that you put into place. Now, with all that said and done, we're always going to have students. I went to grammar school in a Catholic school. I had students acting out in my school, in my classrooms, often. Now, the results were very different. The outcome was very different.
12
but
years.
But I can tell you, I'm not sure that in the long run, any of those students were better off for how they were handled as to opposed to how, our teachers and our principals are handling things right now. But I think that's a thread that's through the conversation. And it's definitely on not only the minds of the principals, but on my mind and on the mind of my whole staff.
Well,
I think
this is a tribute to you. I think a lot has to do with who is the principal.
Yep.
And how they deal with those students in their school.
Yeah, I mean, and I think I would say I would then put the credit right on the teachers, because really
Absolutely.
this tier one that we do, one of the reasons we don't just put routines and procedures into place because it makes it easier on us. We do that because the students who are most likely going to misbehave are going to misbehave during unstructured times, arrival, dismissal, lunch, recess, walking in the hallway from the classroom to specials. That's why if you can put structure into that time, that really calms down the school. That way, when we have to deal with a student who is in crisis, we can. We're not bogged down with 4 other kids who got in trouble for pushing in line at recess. We can deal with the emergency and put all of our focus on that, on how to solve the problem, rather than patch it, send a kid back to class, let me deal with the next emergency. Patch it, we can try to solve the problem.
Is this approach uniform throughout our schools?
It's an ideal, and every school is different.
Yeah,
So
I know.
So and as Adam says, it's really not. I mean, the leader plays a big role, but
yeah.
if Adam made up all of these things and brought his teachers together and says, "Here's what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it," I can tell you, the success would not be there. But the approach has been to build this system from the classroom with the teachers, who are the closest to the work that's going on.
Some of these procedures have been in place since Paula was the principal there. Also, I mean, this isn't just this didn't happen overnight. I mean, a lot of this also came out of self-preservation from when I was assistant principal there, running around with 5 kids trailing me every day because we weren't solving problems. We were putting Band-Aids on things. When you do that job long enough and you realize, am I running in circles? You start to think differently and try to solve the problem rather than patch it.
Maurice is good.
A few months ago, I was working with a family, and they were students at Crocker Elementary School, and the girl was having difficulty, and the mother was getting very upset and, didn't feel, what to do. And, of course, I couldn't go when I wanted a meeting because I couldn't go into a meeting, but I told her to call you and get a meeting set up. And she met with Mr. Bolak, and that was before Thanksgiving, and problem was solved. He took care of it, and the girl is no longer having that difficulty that she was having. And
That's the biggest obstacle is finding out about it, right?
Yeah.
So there are going to be things that are going to happen, and some kids don't want to talk to the principal, assistant principal, even their teacher. So you get a phone call from a parent, and typically that will be the catalyst to solve the problem. But sometimes parents are uncomfortable talking to us too.
She didn't, I'm not going to get any help. They won't. I said, no,
Yeah.
This is what you do, and here you go, and who you see it, and it got taken care of.
Yeah, I mean, I have the utmost confidence in Mr. Bolak and Mrs. Gerard, our SBSA, and both of our guidance staff. Not to mention the teachers. I mean, we have an amazing staff of teachers at Crocker. And, one thing I definitely wanted to say is so administration and guidance, we view ourselves as administration and guidance, and we're also social workers because a lot of this work is case management, and it has to be. And it's okay. And we're lucky enough, because our teachers are so strong, that we can do that work. Because if they weren't, we wouldn't be able to. There would be a whole slew of other things that we would have to do. And I'd have to include coaches in that also. Ms. Gallant, who was supposed to be here tonight, but the weather kept her away, and Mrs. Pierce, our math coach, they are so good at their jobs that I can trust them to do that aspect, and I can really focus on this. And that's really a luxury. And I'm not speaking about specific schools, but just in general, not every principal has such a strong team. I'm very lucky to work with the people who I work with.
I just have a two-part question. How many kids, what's the percentage of kids that you're needing to intervene for, and is it getting worse every year? Are there more and more kids that are having the social emotional learning issue?
That's a hard question to answer because I don't intervene. I talked to. We were walking today, and a little girl asked if she could come and talk to me tomorrow at breakfast because there's a boy being mean to somebody in her class. So, that type of stuff happens all the time. And I think that's great if a kid is comfortable enough to ask to come and have breakfast with the principal because they're having an issue.
Well, with this
with
portion,
serious
issues.
I guess I would be uncomfortable to give a percentage because I don't know offhand. I'd have to figure that out. I don't know. It seems like we're getting poorer every year, but I don't know if that necessarily correlates with behavior. I feel like we have a pretty strong process on how to deal with it, and it doesn't seem like the behavior is more out of control at Crocker every year. In fact, it seems like we're probably getting as we get better at this in refining this what we do. It seems like it's getting a little bit easier.
I want to refer back, and I think what I'm going to ask you to do is maybe spend less time on some of the other components on this because this is an important one. But if you go back to the co-teaching and the Boston College Lynch School of Education, if you remember what Adam said, they brought them in thinking they were going to work on one thing, and they ended up working on another thing. What was the thing that they were going to work on was what happens when one of those co-teachers who's been trained and it's working really well leaves. So now think about the fact that not so much, for the past few years, but you set a structure in place and then you get different teachers that come in. With a new teacher coming in, you're starting all over again, acculturating that new teacher to the way things are done. Take now all of the students that come in. Every year, a whole new kindergarten classroom comes in, a whole new preschool comes in, and then if you have a 20% transition rate of students, every week you have students coming in who have never been in Crocker before. So now they have to be totally brought into the culture of the school. So the fact that this is a human business and not a widget business makes it incredibly complex. For the teacher, for the student, for the parent, and for the administrator who's trying to establish something that works with moving parts all the time. So I think it was interesting to hear you talk about Boston College and how they identified that as an issue with the academics. And that's the same kind of thing in terms of creating a stable culture in a school.
Yeah, as far as creating a stable culture, I was going to give the overview for literacy for Ms. Gallup was going to do it, but I think the fact, just real quick, that we have curriculum documents aligned to the Common Core, and if you haven't seen these, the curriculum documents that the coaches and the former ELA director and Paula created, these are world-class documents that the teachers use in their planning. They're not starting from scratch every year. Or, it's this type of stuff. I never had it when I taught. I wish I did, but that work that's out there and just ready for them to use really is a luxury because now they can spend a lot of their time doing the management piece because of how well that work is. It all, having done that fellowship with Boston College and then working with a lot of principals that work in Boston and in the surrounding areas, they get little to no support from their district. And I get all the support I want. All I need to do is ask. Sometimes I don't have to ask. It's really this is a really a good place to work as far as getting support and being set up to succeed. And then we're moving that. We have the same thing in math now with Engage New York. It's setting us up to be able to focus on needs of the school and not have to worry about other things. So it's not, we could get a couple kids in next week that could kind of turn us upside down for a while. So it's always a really thin line you're walking between having a really great culture and having a few students who can really change that up. But, we can concentrate what we concentrate on Crocker because there's a lot of other people doing a lot of work to put us in a position to be successful.
We have, we've heard a lot here about walkthroughs in many of the presentations, and I think in terms of the reading overview, maybe if you could move on to the what change do we see and talk a little bit about that.
So we're seeing, well, I talked a little bit about that in the co-teaching already, so if it's okay, I'll skip down to the social emotional. We're really seeing teachers start thinking that social way, that really kind of thinking that social worker type of way when needed. When we get phone calls or they're asking us for assistance, they have that data ready, so they're already there with academic data. We come to a meeting and there's an academic problem. They come to the meeting with every single piece of data that we need to make a decision. That's starting to happen now with social emotional. I mean, it kind of did happen with a lot of teachers, but really it's ingrained. When we come to meetings, they've already called the parent. They have the background information that they need, and we're really ready to create an action plan for student success. Any questions?
Yes.
First and foremost, like, wow, this is such amazing work, and I know working at a high school, we are trying to implement some of these SELs and trying to help our students, and the fact that we are having this intervention for those students at such a young age, by the time they go to Fitchburg High, hopefully that's not even an issue, and that's something that, like, I can't give you enough kudos, and I'm sitting there going, yes, 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 oh my goodness. So thank you to you and to the staff and to guidance. Like, it all sounds fantastic. Like,
Thank you.
thank you.
Yes.
I mean, Adam, your results are great, and that's impressive. And so obviously there's so much going right. I guess what I'm kind of curious about is maybe what you do, and I'd be kind of curious from all the principals, what you do when you see something's going wrong. So if you did have, say, a new teacher or any teacher that wasn't really kind of meeting those expectations, what is your response to that? And then my other piece, my other question about that is, and it goes back to what the mayor was asking, you can't be everywhere at every time, and it sounds like you have just this incredible relationship there, but how do you know that there aren't teachers really struggling with some behaviors that are going on in the classroom?
There are absolutely teachers struggling with behaviors. I mean, I think it would be difficult to find any school where that's not happening. Yeah. You know, we try to offer as much support as we can, so that can look differently if it's academic. You know, Fitchburg's lucky enough to have coaches where we can have them go in and do coaching cycles and really show them exactly how we want it done. And to be honest, I think we have two incredible coaches in both reading and math. I mean, you know, our reading coach, for instance, could probably work at Columbia, the Teachers College, where she knows that stuff as well as any of their instructors, if not maybe better. So they're getting first-rate professional development all the time. Our math coach is, you know, just as good. So academically, that's easy to go in a classroom and see if a teacher's struggling in that way. The interesting thing about struggling with behaviors, sometimes teachers are scared to say anything to us. But, you know, at a certain point, they have to call the office for help. So if we have a teacher who's calling guidance to the office, you know, often, you know, we help them with how to set up routines and procedures and what we look for classroom management. And if that doesn't work, we look to see who the kids are and what the behavior is, and if we need to come up with a behavior plan for a student, we do that. So we had a student today who was having issues coming in from recess every day until lunch. There was some issues going on. They walked from the back playground around the building to the front door. So what I did is that student now is the student who comes in through the building, walks to the front through the building, waits for the teacher to come to the front door, and then opens the door. That solved that problem. He has a job to do every day. He's happy about it. It's not negative. And he's never going to push anybody in line again. coming in from recess. I mean, we do lots of that type of stuff, and if you show that to a new teacher enough, they pick up. I mean, I get notes saying so and so needed a walk. Can you give them something to take back to class? Yep. Okay. Thank you. Please bring that. I mean, Pete, I'm sure you did that. Well, yeah. It's formalizing little things that teachers have been doing for years and years, and compiling it and giving it as kind of tips. And then there are some who don't work out. I mean, we have non-renewed teachers at Crocker that just they weren't picking up with how we do things, and we say thank you and go in another direction. But we have pretty low turnover too. We're pretty lucky. Our teachers have been with us a while. So.
Oh, thanks. Thank you, Mr. Renda. I have the good fortune to be with Helen Donlan, who does pet therapy with me, and every time we go to Crocker, it is so consistent. There is quiet in the halls. If kids see us with the animals, and again, there's a Great Dane, and then I have my cat, but every child they're all tuned into each other. I can't describe it any more than that. And there's enormous goodwill. I mean, there's a really nice positive energy with the interactions that we have literally just down the hall into Miss Vitelli's room, and then back out. And the kids are good with each other. Like, I have never seen anyone push anyone in line, and sometimes we're there when, groups of kids are moving around, but I see enormous patience with your teachers, and I think patience can never be overstated, because that's everything. Everything comes after patience. Because I do see children who it's very clear that the nurturing they're getting it at Crocker. They're being nurtured at Crocker.
Well,
so.
That's great to hear, and I just to add to that too, our teachers are willing to. Sometimes this might be the wrong way to say it, but sometimes you have to fight that battle. And what I mean by that is just staying consistent with consequences when a student's getting really upset for maybe having the same consequence for a while. You have to do that. And they do that with that first 6 to 8 weeks of school, setting up that management where the kid's going to learn. I'm not going to win this. If I do this, this is going to happen, and it's going to happen every single time. And they don't give in. The teachers don't give in. It's that battle of wills, and they win that battle of wills. And once you get over that hump, everything else is easier. And then you see that in the hallway, because they want to know that you're going to be consistent.
Yep.
They want the consistency, and they're going to test you until they know, and then it's going to get easier. And it takes 6 to 8 weeks at the beginning of the year to set that up. And we try to focus on that. I went way over. I apologize.
Well, now you've answered the question of why Sister Mary Catherine used to send me in 5th grade to get the soda. It was clearly she was saying, I got to get him out of class right now. So that I've been waiting years to get an answer to that. And the one thing I'll say from the visit today was, those data charts that everybody has seen over and over again, the yellow, the red, and the red, the yellow, and the green. I went into the office today and said, all right, there's blue now. Where is the blue? And the blue is above grade level.
Above benchmark.
So not only now is the school looking at, where are they in terms of the data for achievement, but now they've added another row at the top of blue. And in ELA, there were a ton of kids whose cards were up in the top of the chart in the blue. So it's that, what do we keep looking at to push, that envelope. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adam.
So we'll go from the little ones to the big ones. And Jeremy is here to talk about the high school. Sent you a 2-pager summary and then some really great work to the response. I wasn't at the last school committee meeting, but I know one of the questions was, is there any way of finding out how does a student do? Because now, lined up with what Juana was saying, if those skills are taught in kindergarten and first grade and they stay with us to high school, they won't have any work to do by the time these students get to high school. And the charts that you've seen, really start to look at that in terms of what do we find about the success rate of students that have been with us for 2 years, 4 years, or 12 years. So thanks for adding that to your presentation.
Absolutely. And, obviously, I hope all of the students at Crocker do come to because I think we can show that they do well, and obviously they continue the great stuff that's going on at that school, and I'm sure the other ones. Similar to Adam, we are focusing on a number of topics that I think kind of fall under that umbrella of social emotional supports. We needed to look specifically at suspension, strategies and interventions to address what really was kind of a high rate. And so we spent a lot of time last year, at the end of the year, and then over the summer, getting ready to implement a number of rules, modifications to our rules, especially as it pertained to anything that was related to sort of truancy or class cuts or attendance but non-disruptive behaviors. Because what we were finding when we were looking at our results was, about 70 to 80% of our disciplinary issues had something to do with that. And kind of similar to what Adam was talking about as well, a lot of times it was avoidance, it was issues that were, sort of undiagnosed as opposed to, being treated with an in-house suspension half a day or a day or whatever. So we spent a number of professional development sessions with our teachers before school started and even in the beginning of the fall to work on the procedures that we wanted to put in place. And so we've seen some good results so far. I mean, we're pretty happy with what we've seen. We've reduced the referrals tremendously by putting in a few protocols that just simply require the teacher to be involved with the student on topics that are related to, as I said, a truancy issue, a class cut type of issue, leaving class early, wandering around type of thing, but a non-disruptive, non-disrespect type of issue. In addition, we sort of coupled that with focusing on always looking at how do we improve our attendance. So, I think we've put a lot of things in place there. Again, some of them already in place, some kind of reinstated. We started this process really with a school-wide writing prompt that we did in February and asking the students to look at the data of the school and come up with some ideas. And we actually put some of those in place. We wrapped up a great attendance incentive activity right around the holiday break at the end of December, and that was purely student-generated in terms of the ideas there. Again, I think what our initial results are showing is that we've focused a lot whole school on this, even more than I think we already did, but I think even more so, and by tightening the ratchet a little bit in some specific areas. And right now, halfway through the year, we did start semester 2 today. We're on track for what will be the highest attendance rate in the school's history. So we're hopeful, we're excited. We're looking at, we're not there yet, but I think we've been reinforcing that with a number of different techniques, and most of them just involve more conversation, more focused discussion. I work a lot with the sophomore class around this and then help, as needed with the senior class. We're all kind of involved with this. It requires a layer of guidance, which we didn't have before. It requires consultations between the teacher and the parent, these types of things that I guess were implied but not written down, and now that it's very specific, I think, again, we're seeing some positives. We chose engagement strategies as one of our school-wide SMART goals for everybody, myself included. We're using a great book, Engaging Students with Poverty in Mind. I think many of you are familiar with it. If not, it's very practical. It has specific ideas, specific activities that a teacher can attempt to use in their classroom, from reading a short passage to actual application in the classroom. So our SMART goal is set up that we read the chapters in our professional learning circles, and then the teachers attempt the strategies. They have to attempt, I think, 8 over the course of the year, and then share those, amongst their peers and their colleagues in the PLCs that they have. We do walkthroughs around that. We'll do group walkthroughs on Wednesday, and that'll be our focus of what we're looking at. just how are these engagement strategies going? What kind of positive feedback can we give? What kind of other ideas can we support the teachers with as we do that? And then we'll also be looking at another big thing I think that we spent a lot of time hemming and hawing over, but eliminating the use of personal cell phones in the classrooms,
Great.
I believe has had a very positive impact. Simultaneously adding the Chromebooks, which you did, in addition to, with the seniors as a one-to-one initiative. Again, I think those two things coincided to really create a positive environment, a distraction-free environment, which we're constantly looking at, in this age of every kid has essentially a powerful computer, in their phone that doesn't need your Wi-Fi system to be able to be fully connected to the internet and all of that. So I think those sort of combination of various activities and initiatives that we've taken on have helped and also led to quite a bit of the reduction in the referrals that we've seen. For us, we're always looking at how do we improve, in subgroup focus for, at Fitchburg High School, it's special ed and our Ls. I mean, we have an achievement gap there. There's no question about it. But I think we're constantly looking at it, looking at the data around it, trying to address various intervention strategies, that we have in place now for, in some cases, the second year with Math Plus and English, et cetera. We are our first year using the Plato intervention packs. There's some startling but very useful information there. Like the K-8, we've actually taken on accelerated reader program this year in our English classes. We have a dynamite librarian, Kim Cochran. I know Dr. Cochran, some of you have met, and she's been tracking, the really, I think, upgrading our collection, but also tracking the use, students accessing the texts and the novels and the different things that she has there. So we're up there as well. We created a teaching team for our ESL program. It's a 6-person team. It adds a special ed component. The special ed teacher was trained in co-teaching with Donna Simone, whom we had as a consultant a few years ago. Our ESL program this year, I think, really has made some strong gains. I speak to one where we reduced discipline referrals by 90% at this point in the year, from previous year. The teachers and the department facilitators and the coaches, also come up with creative ways to again, reinforce the strategies, and the academic supports they're doing. The math sprints, we have Engage New York for Algebra 1 and Geometry, and they're using these math sprints to really improve number sense and a student's, fluency, I think, really, in just basic math skills, which, believe it or not, for students that struggle, that's an issue. So, we'll be doing some open response question writing focus over the next couple of months. Every department will do rounds of that and then analyze the results with the protocols that we have to do that. But another thing that we're encouraged by and I think looking forward to is having DSAC come in for a couple of days. It's looking like later February, maybe early March, depending upon kind of their timeline. But they'll come in for 2 days. And, I think at the high school level, I hear about some of the great stuff that the elementaries, in particular Crocker, do with using data and analyzing data and putting it into place. And I'll be honest with you, I think we can do a better job there, and I take full responsibility for that. But I think that's where the DSAC team will help us. And they're honest. They said, high schools are not very good at that, So I think we're probably a good example, to some degree, of we can do things, we can refine some of we have these massive amounts of data, and how do we put it into play to really impact student learning immediately and on the spot, and some of those goals that we have. And so I'm looking forward to that, feedback. On the second page, it's a review of, I was here for the discussion at the last school committee of looking at, how do students who are longer serving in the Fitchburg Public Schools do, in just using one simple measurement, the MCAS results. So I did take the class of 2018, the most recent class that took the English and Math MCAS. So you can see some of the data there, and I think it's pretty clear to see that, a student who was enrolled in grades K through 2, of which, it's about a third. By the time we get them, it's maybe a little bit more than a third, but somewhere in that 35%, 40% of the kids that'll take it in 10th grade were there in K to 2. But if you just look at English and Math, we had 0% failing for that group in English, and the aggregate was 6%. We had 91.3% advanced and proficient, which is 11 points higher on the achievement than the aggregate. And I think in Math, it was more than 17% failing to 7.2. In a decent improvement in advanced and proficient. So, looking at that, I think it's fair. You heard from Adam Renda just 10 minutes ago. I mean, it's clear that our kids will do well, there. So some of the challenges we have, they are what they are, and it's how do we do better with some of the students who aren't as longer, haven't been with us that long, or who, are coming in and we need to get them up to speed really quickly. That's what some of that intervention packs and those courses that we've created. Just looking at it, from the time we took the MCAS tests in March and May of last year, there's about 40 kids who are no longer with us, but we've enrolled 38 this year into the class of 2018. So there's that constant kind of movement and working through, and some of those kids do very well, but you can also see that they actually don't do as well, especially compared to the K to 2 or the K to 4 enrollment. So it's an interesting thing to look at, with respect to just, that's the challenge that we have, and it's a great challenge, and we're trying to look for ways that, again, we can use some of those data points to immediately support some of the students that come in, and, there'll be a second grade math level, or a third grade reading level when we do use a Plato type of assessment on those two skill sets. And again, we just try to meet them right there and find ways to get them up to speed as quickly as possible. In some cases, that's like 2 months, and then, okay, here's the MCAS test. And we're going to cross our fingers, but, hopefully you'll do well and enough, and if not, we'll take you there and we'll do the retests. And we just got our November retests back, and many of those kids are brand new to the school, but we had a really strong performance on those, I think, for the kids who were doing the English and Math retests. So, like I said, lots of things going on. Probably could have done 10 pages, but wanted to just hit the things we're constantly talking about: engagement strategies, getting to school, focusing on why a kid is not in school, getting to the house, calling them, sending them, doing all those different things. Working with kids who are struggling with their behavior, whatever it might be, to keep them focused and not disrupting to other students, but, in the classroom learning, really, ultimately.
Jeremy, you should be shouting from the rooftops this data, the discipline data. Look at the drop. Am I missing something here?
No.
You went from 561 in-school suspension to 166? What's why?
Well,
it's great.
I think
that whole
thank
category.
We appreciate that, and it's honestly, we looked at it very carefully for the second half of last year as a full faculty, and we were not satisfied with the fact that a lot of students were ending up in our in-school suspension, which is a school day. They're in a room, there's computers there, they have their work, but they're not in their classes. And in many cases, Mayor, it was for one of those issues I described. They didn't go to class. Well, they left class 20 minutes early and, hit the bathroom, did a tour of the building, didn't make it back. It was these kind of like non-disruptive disruptive to the student but no one else type of
Yeah,
issues.
yeah.
That ended up landing them in the in-house suspension room. You generally never out of school suspension, but a lot of times in the in-house suspensions room. So we looked at that and we studied a number of schools. You know, we reached out to 5 different high schools across the state that we considered to be, you know, either the DART school, the Department of Ed says is most like you, or what we considered comparable peers, people we might have known somehow. And most were using some different strategies around the sort of class avoidance issue. And so we put those into place, you know, and we went over it very carefully with the faculty. We were fully agreed that we needed to do something about this. And so the teachers have done an unbelievable job. I mean, they have dealt with, you know, addressing these issues, contacting the parents, staying after school with kids, you know, talking about these issues, you know, constantly, I think. And so, you know, I think that's why there's been a significant reduction there.
I mean, really, very impressive.
But yeah, I mean, as a faculty, we're looking at this data, you know, I would say at least every month at our faculty meeting. If not, I'll send an update in the week ahead memo too. So we're constantly looking at it. In addition to our attendance data, which we look at every day, you know, we're looking at this discipline data too, because again, we want to make it so that students are in class, you know, and not trying to avoid it somehow and figuring out what it is that's getting in the way.
Great. Questions? Yes.
I have a follow-up question about that. And I have a lot of questions, so I'll maybe stick to a couple of these right now. But it is incredible that decrease. And I guess my question is, I think there's got to be kind of a chilling effect, right, when the state kind of hands down such a, I don't know, slap, I guess. So I guess part of my question is, and it's similar to what I was asking Adam, do you feel that you have a pulse on whether teachers feel comfortable reporting those issues? Do you think teachers feel at all like, I really can't be doing this because we're not allowed to do this? And does it lead to any difficulty really for teachers in handling behaviors that they might have handled differently?
It's a valid question. I would say I deal with a lot of the discipline issues too, and I feel like the combination of strategies, the engagement focus, the cell phone, you know, zone free.
How do you do that?
It's not perfect, but
You have
we
to have them turn the phone in when
They're
they go into
supposed
class?
to keep it out of sight in the class.
keep it
Whereas
out of
they used
sight.
to be able to use it depending upon, because there were educational apps. There were different things where you could practically say in a math class,
Yeah.
have your cell phones out, you've downloaded some, you know, sort of multifunction calculator. But what happens is, and the way we explain this to students was, you know what happens. You take your phone out, you intend to go to your calculator, but you see you got an IM.
Text.
You see you got a text.
Right.
You open the text, you quickly respond, then you see this funny link that somebody sent you, so you open that. And now, I said, adults, we're guilty too. This is the way it works for all of us. So that's how we presented it to students. Getting back to the question you asked, though, I would say that, I mean, I don't feel like that there's any increase in disrespect, that there's any increase in the disruptive behaviors that we're going to have occasionally, because we really focused it on, I mean, I feel like my message to the staff, to the faculty, to students is, if you're going to take it, if you're going to impinge on someone's right to an education, if you're going to be hostile and aggressive, if you're going to be grossly disrespectful, you're going to face a very stern and serious consequence. We haven't changed that at all. We've just really focused on this kind of, again, non-disruptive, except to the student type of behavior, because we were seeing that was 70 to 80% of all of the stuff we were dealing with. And So I think that we've maintained that you can't have an effective school without order, without respect for the general rules of how we're going to treat each other and how we're going to operate. I feel like our kids are very respectful to kids. You know, they get salty in language. They get their different things happening that's maybe, you know, from songs they hear or just whatever. But, you know, in terms of generally speaking, I feel like, you know, and we added student IDs in too. To help with sort of general awareness of who's who, and we have them color-coded by class. And so I think all of these things together, you know, are helping us to reduce those types of rates without saying, okay, no more discipline referrals. No more, we're not suspending anymore, because we can't do that. You know, there are certain things that we have to sit in and say, hey, listen, there's a serious consequence for this. If you were in the real world, you'd be fired from your job. You'd be looking at expulsion from your college. You'd be in the brig at the military. That's the next step for our kids. So we have those conversations with them and their families when necessary. And you know, I think that's not going to change at Fitchburg High School. I mean, we're gonna maintain that, but we needed to focus on a specific area that we just weren't. The interesting thing is, too, we were doing this 2 to 3 months, our own self-study, and then we got the notification from the Department of Ed that we were suspending at a high rate. So it's interesting how that coincided kind of in a way like, oh, well, you know what? This actually reinforces the focus we've been taking anyway, that, you know, we know we need to do something about this. So it wasn't the end of the world when we got that notification.
Could I follow up on that? Because a lot of schools don't have an in-school suspension room.
Yeah.
And so I feel like, as in so many things that the state often does, that it's comparing apples to oranges. So if you're a school system that doesn't have that, and I don't know what the alternative, that maybe you have like many, many more detentions. I guess their point of being out of class time is the point.
Yeah.
But I don't really understand how schools can kind of compare in that situation.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
Isn't that a standard, though? Suspension classrooms?
No.
Hasn't been around for
Very
forever,
different,
though?
and even the reporting is irregular.
Oh, yeah.
There are lots of
Incredibly.
schools who aren't reporting.
They're not reporting.
They just don't report.
They just don't report. So, and I mean, that's brought up when we have meetings statewide.
It is at my
that,
level, too.
That, you know, if you, you know, we're rule followers here, and I think that's a good thing, you know, and like you said, was this just like a wake-up call or whatever? But the staff had already been looking at this for 3 months, which put me, as the superintendent, in a good position when they all came visiting from the Department of Ed to come and, you know, tell us, you know, you've got 2 schools. And I was able to say both with Jeremy and with Craig at Lonjo, here, let me show you the work that's already being done, you know, on this topic, as opposed to, caught us, you know, now what are we going to do?
And Andre, I don't look at this as a wake-up call. I think I just want you to make sure that I don't come off that way, because I have worked with lots of students who are at times very, very disrespectful, and they absolutely have to have consequences. So I was actually looking at this as, wow, people are trying to do the right thing, and is it making it harder for teachers to feel like they can go and say, listen, I'm having discipline problems, and please help me deal with it, because I think people need that. You know, bigger kids, bigger problems sometimes, and bigger bodies, and it can be very. I guess I just want to know: do kids in a classroom feel like a behavior problem is going to be taken care of, and they're going to be able to continue learning? Do teachers feel like a behavior problem is going to be taken care of? And because I really do feel like the state of Massachusetts Department of Ed is out of touch on what's actually happening in a classroom. So I didn't want you to feel like I was asking, hey, was this a wake-up call for you guys? Because I think you're doing the right thing, and it's just I wanted to know what the effect was on the other piece.
Oh, and I totally respect your question. I think our discussions have also been is we have to maintain balance. you know, and those expectations for respectful behavior and not disrupting others from learning and the teacher from teaching. And so I feel like we don't tolerate that, you know, and that, you know, whether it's Tom DiGeronimo, who's very effective in what he does in that role and working with the juniors and seniors, or myself, Mr. Minucci or Jen Scott, you know, and you know, and working with some of the younger kids, I think that, again, we try to maintain that the classroom is a very important place, and you have a role in there, and you're part of that process, but you know, you don't get in the way of what other people are doing. And I think that it's pretty orderly at Fitchburg High School. I'm proud of the way the students behave, and they're great kids. They're fun to work with, and you know. But if they step out of line in their respect, they're called on it for sure. And I think the teachers do a really good job of that too.
You know, I like to see the suspension rate come down, but it really comes down, you've got to have order.
Yeah.
And you need to have control. And that's really the bottom line. You can't teach unless you have control. And out-of-school suspension is a necessity. And I know, like I say, some schools, you have kid gets in trouble, come pick him up, take him home. All right? All right, sits in the office all day. There's not here on the report.
Yeah.
You know, no, it's very important. It's nice to see it come down, but it's very important to have control. And the kids know the game. Going back, I had a teacher where the kids knew if I show up without my pencil and my book, I get sent to the office. You know, so you work on that. You have extra pencils and you have extra books. You know, you don't send them out. You know, so those are the things you work on.
You know, the kids need to be in class.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's if we're going to improve on, you know, the bottom layer or some of these other, you know, areas of performance, achievement at the very least, never mind growth. I mean, it's hard if you're not in class.
Yeah.
And so, again, I think all of these pieces are interconnected, and they each lend to one another in supporting the notion that we want you to be in school, we want you to be in class, we want you to be engaged when you're in class. And all of the discussion we've been having and the focus that we've been, you know, emphasizing really all year have been sort of circling around those aspects.
Just a quickie. By chance, I am in Fitchburg High School more often than not, again, with a therapy pet. And one thing I noticed with the kids having the ID tags is there's a certain amount of professionalism, I think, that goes with that. And, you know, I was noticing them. It was helpful to see people's names. And they're all very used to having, you know, something around their neck. But hearing about the cell phone, someone recently asked me, what's the policy at the high school? And I said, I'll find out. So thank you for filling me in. I think what you're doing is you're putting expectations in front of them, as you said, that are really more of the adult world than the school world. So, or the child world. So you're having expectations that adults will have of them. And I think their transition to adulthood, having name tags, you know, not having the cell phone, and again, the courtesy. I'm in the cafeteria, which, you know, is not an, you know, it's everyone is sort of going in different directions. What I see are kids interacting really well with one another. I see, again, I'm there with, you know, therapy animals, so everyone kind of gets very happy and excited. But around me, I see kids getting along and then, you know, going to the door when it's time to go. So I definitely have a sense that there's, you know, people are connected and kids are happy. They're well adjusted. That, again, that's what I'm seeing. But then again, I'm also looking at my therapy cat. So well done.
Same thing. I'm in the high school frequently, and the kids are really super, you know, very helpful, friendly.
Yes.
You see them passing in the hallways, you know, they're kids, and, you know, they're just going about their business. The other thing that you mentioned, Jeremy, is the library. Books. You know, we we have spent a lot of money on technology. I would like to see something come from the high school on library books for the library and do some restocking, because we have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on technology in the last few years, and I would like to see something come in where we could do something for library books in the library.
Well, their librarian, I mean, we're in contact all the time. So their librarian is totally aware that whatever she needs, she just has to start there.
Enhance the collection, I would say, dramatically.
Yeah, so she's constantly working on that. The high school has a budget for that. And if we were to wipe out the high school budget and Ms. Cochran came up, I was thinking, listening, I'd love to have her come and talk about the work that she does, because she's, on Twitter and all kinds of things, that it's a very different world than, kind of the library that, we still think about. So
I'm so pleased that she's there.
We can show the support, and maybe after all the principals have done, maybe we get her to come in and talk about the kind of work that's going on in the new library.
You have a budget, but I'd like to see a shot in the arm, just that little extra help out.
She'd put it to good use, I guarantee you.
Just a quickie mentioning the library. So it's not sort of officialized yet, but the Fitchburg State University, Fitchburg Public Library, and Fitchburg High School are collaborating on something for Poetry Month. So there's going to be a meeting at 2:30 Friday. Folks from the university, because I do Authors Night at the Fitchburg Library, I'm going. Marsha's going from the library. So there's something we're brewing up, and I don't know what it will be, for Poetry Month with these three crucial educational institutions. So that's happening.
Yes.
So just maybe getting back a little bit to MCAS prep or any of that. And this is completely anecdotal on my part. And it's not a high school issue, it's more, I think, all the way through kind of issue. I really wonder how much revision culture kind of exists in schools. I feel like in my own children's education, I feel like they work on something, they hand it in, they get it done, they get it back.
Yeah.
But if we're trying to push people to understand how to get to that next level, and I don't know if this is something you can answer or something that you've seen a lot of, and maybe Paula, you maybe see it more, how much of the culture exists to say, okay, so now let's talk about what you need to do to improve that, resubmit, and just, I know NEASC talks a lot about that, like the degree to which students are given opportunities for revision, and I just wonder how much of that you see, and if that...
Well, I think, the idea of sort of standards-based reporting as opposed to sort of cumulative grade or point total is definitely a topic that's been around for a long time, and one that high schools have struggled with. But what I would say is what is very common practice in the high school, at Fitchburg High School, is strategies to give students incentives to improve the grade by making corrections. Test corrections, very common. On a sort of objective test, in many of the classes, the teachers review it and then allow students to make test corrections to increase their score. I think it's very common in sort of the writing types of assignments where there's a draft process, so that by the time you submit the paper, the essay, the written document of some sort, it's been reviewed numerous times, and where most of those assignments are done through the Google Docs suite, the teachers look at the revision histories too. That's a part of the process now, and especially I think the English department is very savvy about that. I can think of many examples I see in walkthroughs and observations where what's going on is some correction from, whatever it was that they were doing. So it might have been even just a formative assessment around, geez, we didn't seem to understand this concept from the previous lesson or two, so we're going to, approach it from a different angle. So I think that there are a lot of opportunities for students to do that. As we look at specific performance levels, it's unfortunate in certain respects that the snapshot is a single test, for some kids. Because, there are kids that we have that I can think of specific examples of students who, they're very good students, they just come with limited English skills, where they've had interrupted formal schooling to some degree. They're a good student, they're learning, but the snapshot that they have is, an MCAS math test or an MCAS English test, where they're just not quite ready for it, but they got to take it at that time frame. As we're talking about intervening for students who are really struggling or behind, we're looking at supplemental courses there. Or so they have a regular, say, geometry class and Math Plus. They have a regular English class and English, etc. That's much smaller, that's much more one-on-one, that is looking at some of the things that you're describing around, working through mistakes that are being made frequently to try to undo those or to try to, buffet, a new skill set that just isn't there currently. But yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunities for that type of revision and correction and getting it right, even if you didn't get it right the first time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much. Good work. Keep it up.
Andre.
Andre.
Maybe for help for Jeremy, but could we find out what the policy is for cell phones in the middle schools?
Sure.
If they have one, or if there is one, or...
Thank you.
Do you see them in elementary, Mr. Renda?
Yeah, this kid's them.
Yeah.
We just have to stay in the bag with one.
Okay, I'll check that out.
Yeah, we
Get
should
back
have
to
something
you.
that's consistent, so if they can't...
Might have a middle school principal
It's not
coming at
gonna
our
roll
next,
anymore.
so I'll use that principal and put him on the spot.
Okay.
Can I
Okay.
just say thank you to both of you for coming and telling us about the work that you do, because it is really impressive. So, what hard work.
Thanks.
So we've had a number of meetings now, resource subcommittee meetings and building needs subcommittee meetings about these SOIs. So these SOIs are to the schools that are what were formerly called green repairs. Now they're called accelerated repairs. Those are on here for approval tonight. Did you want to add anything to that? I think we've kind of explained this and talked about it a lot. And then the other piece is the time and location regular school meeting policy. I know the subcommittee worked on that.
Yes.
So if you want to bring everybody up to speed on that.
Sure, we are, Marisa? So we looked at this, if you pull it out of your packet, it's the time and location of regular school committee meetings. And I can just read this briefly. All meetings of the committee shall be public and shall be conducted in accordance with the rules of parliamentary practice as laid down in Robert's Rules of Order, newly revised, copyright 1970, and according to Chapter 39 of Mass General Laws. The regulations are, the committee shall hold its regular meetings on the first and third Monday in October, November, March, April, May, and June, and on the first Monday only in September, December, January, and February. The reasoning for this is that for those 4 months, especially, those 4 months coincide with either, the school year is starting, December is hectic. There's usually, January and February are the preparing for budget. So to take that third Monday and use it for subcommittee meetings, again, we've talked amongst ourselves, and so we brought this forward to the subcommittee, and we wanted to bring it to the full committee for a first reading, and to get everyone's input on this.
Mike, I do have a question about when the optimal time to kind of weigh in on the budget is, and it just seems like it would be in that January, February, or February piece, but no.
It's still early.
Yeah.
Like, for example, the the governor's budget is not coming out until now, so that's almost the end of January. And then the month of February is just gathering all kinds of information. So you don't even start to get even a rough picture of what things might be till after February into March.
But have you already gotten from principals?
No.
Okay, so that's, I thought you did do that in February.
No.
But, okay.
We're going to be doing that.
Okay.
And we have a draft budget calendar that we just looked at this morning at Cabinet that I'll be sending out.
Okay.
So, thoughts on this? I communicated with Beth Walsh, who said she was in support of this revised calendar. So I won't speak for her, but she did. We were texting earlier today.
Good.
Other subcommittee folks want to comment?
No, I like it. Looks good. Thank you to Mr. Stevens. I think he was the mastermind on this. Yes.
I have a couple hesitations because, and granted, I know I'm the newest on the committee, but to me, you know, today was a relatively longer meeting than most. So if we agree to this policy, we wouldn't have been meeting today. So my question that I've been like trying to think about and what groups of people, what activities would we not be hearing about in January and February, and especially December? Granted, I can live without, December, granted I can live without September because school's starting. And then I know there was, when we were meeting in the committee, we talked about possibly certain groups not coming to talk to us every time because they're annual events or annual things that happen. And to me, I think there's a huge assumption that all of us will be gathered here in 5 years from now. And that's could be true. That could absolutely not be true. So I think that if someone can bring some insight as to how we would still obtain all the information we're obtaining by meeting twice a month without losing time, I'd be happy to agree with this, but I guess I'm struggling with that. Because we have tons of people come talk to us, and I gather some presentations could be shorter in length, but really I couldn't not say, and I looked through the agendas and say, oh, well, that group, I didn't have to hear about them. I enjoyed that. I am not in the schools. I can't be in the schools 24/7 or even Monday through Friday. So I guess I asked the committee members who agree with it, how could we still hear and gather all that information without meeting 4 times a month, or twice a month, and four of our academic months. We already don't meet in July and August, and we do a reunion, but that's one. So I guess that would be my question to you guys.
Well, I think just based on speaking with Patty, Juana was very instrumental in getting most of the students to come in and present to us.
Jana,
I'm sorry, Juana.
That's okay.
Anyways, and she said it's very hard to gather people to get here. So where we no longer have Jana, and I don't know if we're going to be replacing her, that may already cut the meetings down significantly.
Sure.
So
I guess that's a question to you, Mr. Ravenel. Are we going to be replacing, is Jana's position on the hiring?
That would be a budget question, as we kind of approach the budget from a zero base and look at
Perfect.
what are our priorities, what do we want to do. I think I'm making an effort, and I've encouraged the principals to make an effort. So, them coming tonight was not Jana, and the last time people came was not Jana. So one of the things Jana did was put a lot of things in place for us that make it easier now to actually reach out, and also teachers are more used to emailing me or Patty and saying, oh, I'd like to bring my, so it's a little bit of a mix. It's not as robust and easy as it used to be when, Jana was just doing it and keeping an eye on things. So, but with or without Jana, I would say I'll be focused on keeping as many people coming before us to talk about what's happening in the schools and what they're doing.
I think, Alana, we can get
groups in the 2 meeting a months, and they might even, the 1 meeting a month might be a little longer, but I think we can make it. One thing is school committee, we're the ones setting the calendar, and if we see it doesn't work, we can come back and revise the policy.
If I may,
Oh.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
the regulations can be revised at any time because they're regulations. So the policy
Yeah.
stays. It would either go from the committee to the subcommittee, but those regulations, as they're currently outlined, could be changed, as Mr. Stevens said. Without actually revising the policy, you'd just be revising the regulations if the meeting structure didn't work for your needs. Yep.
And another piece, let me think. Pete and I think we're heading into our 9th year, or we're in our 9th year and heading into our 10th year. So the habit seems to be that we lose some meetings in that January-February zone. So we've in the last 10 years, Andre, we've lost some meetings. We've lost some Mondays just because of how storms fall. What I really like is the work that you were able to do on the subcommittee for the policy, and that was back in November. And we're going to try to finish that work up in January, because you and Paula got so much work together in one subcommittee meeting. And I've got a subcommittee meeting with Paula, and then we have a student support subcommittee meeting. And I'm actually looking forward to experimenting and seeing how much more we can do by having that third Monday in February, for our subcommittees, because that is where the work happens. And I think Patty shared, and I certainly saw it myself when, up until 2008, we did not have really active subcommittees. We did not have regular meetings of finance and policy. There were no meetings. Negotiations was, a very occasional. The student support did not exist. No one was addressing curriculum. So the kind of the nitty gritty sleeves rolled up work gets done in those subcommittees.
I gather that, and I appreciate it, and I hear you. I guess to me, having not meeting twice a month, 4 months out of this school calendar, isn't going to be. I mean, work is still done in the other months in subcommittee, right? So I guess to me, I don't understand that, but. Okay, I appreciate your input. Thank you.
Questions? So this was the first reading?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And it's on our agenda to be
Right. Yeah.
voted on.
We're voting on this now?
Well, it's
No.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's at the end of the.
at the very end, yeah.
No.
So that was the last item on
Yes.
the agenda.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. Okay. You want to go into the donations?
There's just public testimony
Okay.
was the only, that's,
We had 2 donations.
sorry, yes. So the first donation is accepting $500 from Global Companies in Waltham, and it will be used to support attendance incentives and other related activities. And that is going, is that at the central office or to the high school?
Might have been the high school.
It must be, because
I
for
think it's
donation.
high school. It is.
It's high school, that's what I
Yeah,
thought.
Jeremy
It doesn't
Road,
say
right.
high school here.
Yeah.
And then there's another donation there for winter jackets.
Right.
Thank you, Superintendent Ravenel.
Well, you want to take a vote on these now? What's the committee's wishes? We'll vote on them now?
Yep.
17-802 and 17-803.
Make a motion to accept the donations.
Motion made,
Second.
seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you.
801.
17-801, approve the superintendent recommendation to accept the school calendar for the 2017-2018 school year. Motion?
Motion.
Second.
Made, seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? It is unanimous. You want to move into the statements of interest. Bob, you think, want to do that?
Sure. You want to accept as a group 804, 805, 806. Approve the submittal of statements of interest for South Street Elementary School, Goodrich Academy, and Longshore Middle School.
Motion? Yes. Yes.
Before we take a
Mhm.
motion on that. So, I know that in the language here, it doesn't mean anybody makes decisions or anything like that, but we've had discussions in the past about sort of a long-range plan about Longjo, and when does that come back on the radar? And just, I know that we've talked about that in sort of like a vision of what we'd like to see in the future about schools, and these are absolutely all, in my view, important investments, and we want to proceed in the process that could kind of make it happen. I just was curious if that, like, where that's at.
I'd like us to move forward with next year's request to SBA school building assistance for Longshore. I think that was discussed. The wheels are in motion for Crocker, so we're focusing all our attention on Crocker right now with SBA. And I'm hoping next year we can redirect to Longshore. I think that's
Or even
for
just
roof.
have a different vision of what
Yeah.
Longjo might be or where it might be
Yeah.
at some point, right?
I'm committed to I want to keep Longshore just where it is. That's my,
I guess
my
that was
position.
my question, because
Yeah.
I think that might not be I don't want to keep Longjo where it is personally, but
Oh,
I'm
okay.
kind of, I didn't know where this fits in that whole
Yeah.
debate or vision of what that might
So
be.
if I can
I'm
help
sorry.
here.
Yep.
So there are two different kinds of things going on, short range,
Yeah,
long range.
okay.
What you're looking at today is as close to what we used to call green repair, the windows, the boilers, the roofs, and everything that we
Yeah.
did on all of those schools. So there's a new pipeline, and it's called accelerated repair. So with or without, dependent of what the future is for the long-term picture, the things that are described here under Longjo are things that need to be
Yeah,
done
okay.
right now. Because even if everyone was to develop a whole new plan for Longjo, none of that's going to happen. None of that would even happen for another 2 or 3 years. In the meantime, the things that are
Yeah.
on here need to be done right now.
Okay, so I apologize. I
And
just-
then what the mayor was getting at is that we got, based on all the conversations that happened before, we got Crocker in the official pipeline as a
Yep.
individual school, which we actually had a meeting about today, and that process needs to start. And then any future kind of long-term big project has to be in the next round. So that would be the next round
Okay.
of looking at long-term use of all of our buildings. So short-term, middle-term, and then there's perhaps another long-term conversation to take place. None of this precludes
Yeah,
any of
okay.
that.
Thank you.
These are statements of interest.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are throwing our hats in the ring.
Yeah.
Entertain this request. Again, non-binding.
Right.
Yeah,
You know.
I do understand.
No money involved.
Yeah, no money involved.
So sorry.
The committee wish to vote?
Motion.
Yes, I'll make a motion that we accept 804, 805, 806.
Motion made, seconded, to accept 804, 805, 806. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? It is unanimous. 17-807, approve the superintendent's recommendation to approve first reading of the revised time and location of regular school committee
Make a
meeting.
motion.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous.
One opposition.
Oh, one in opposition. I'm sorry. Okay, one in opposition. Thank you. 17-808, approve the superintendent's recommendation to accept the warrant in the amount of $730.
Make a motion, pay the bills.
Motion made,
Second.
seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? No need for executive session.
Motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
done.
All in favor? They're adjourned.